The strange signals came in the early morning of March 12, 2037. Dr. Alan Wright was alone in the control room at Arecibo Observatory when the computers started beeping. He had been working there for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. "This can't be right," he whispered, adjusting his glasses. The pattern was too perfect, too regular. Natural space phenomena didn't behave this way. By noon, observatories around the world confirmed what Alan already knew. The signal was artificial. It was coming from beyond our solar system. It was alien. Within days, the United Nations called an emergency meeting. World leaders argued about what to do, until Captain Samantha Carter stepped forward. She had spent 15 years studying possible alien languages and communication methods. "We need to respond," she told them simply. "And I think I know how." The world governments formed a coalition, putting Samantha in charge of the response team. Her calm voice and steady hands were exactly what they needed. She gathered experts from around the globe, including Lisa Bennett, a brilliant young programmer from MIT. Lisa didn't speak much. She preferred the company of algorithms and code. But when Samantha explained what they needed, Lisa's eyes lit up. "Give me 3 days," she said. Lisa worked without sleep, fueled by coffee and the excitement of the greatest programming challenge in human history. On the 3rd day, her algorithm was ready. It analyzed the alien patterns and generated a response based on mathematical principles. "It's the only language we definitely share," Lisa explained as they sent humanity's first message to the stars. To everyone's surprise, the aliens responded within hours. Lisa's algorithm translated their message. "We see you." For 3 months, the messages continued. The aliens called themselves the Varen. They asked about Earth, human biology, our technology, and social structures. They shared little about themselves but seemed peaceful. Scientists and leaders began to hope for a new era of interstellar friendship. Then, without warning, the Varen went silent. "Maybe we said something wrong," Samantha suggested during an emergency meeting. "Cultural misunderstandings happen even between human nations." Ellen shook his head. "I don't think so." The signal strength was increasing right before they stopped, almost as if they were getting closer. 1 week later, Alan's theory proved correct. The first Varen ships appeared in Earth's orbit early on a Sunday morning. They were massive, sleek vessels that reflected sunlight like polished metal. There were 7 of them, positioned over major cities around the world. For 24 hours, they did nothing. The world held its breath. Militaries went on high alert, but no one fired. They waited. Lisa worked frantically to send messages to the ships, using the communication protocols they had established. No response came. Why would they come all this way just to ignore us? Samantha wondered aloud. On the 2nd day, all electronic devices on Earth received the same transmission. Television screens, phones, computers, all showed the same image of a tall, slender being with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. "People of Earth," the Varen spoke in perfect English. "We are the Varen Collective. We have studied your transmissions and learned your languages. We have analyzed your civilization." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are primitive. Your technology is crude. Your biology is inefficient. Your societies are chaotic." Samantha and her team watched in horror as the alien continued. "Your planet has resources we require. Your resistance would be pointless and wasteful. We will establish extraction operations immediately." The transmission ended. Minutes later, smaller ships began to descend from the larger vessels. In the command center, Samantha turned to her team. "Get the president on the line. Now." Alan stared at the radar showing dozens of alien craft entering Earth's atmosphere. "They'd never wanted to communicate," he said quietly. "They were just studying us." Lisa nodded, her face pale, like scientists studying bacteria before they clean a Petri dish. The first Varen landing ships touched down on Earth soil 30 minutes later. The invasion had begun. The Varen ships landed in major cities across the world. People ran in fear or stood frozen in shock as the tall, blue-gray aliens emerged. Their movements were smooth and precise, like well-oiled machines. In Chicago, Colonel John Miller watched from his command post as 3 alien craft settled in Grant Park. He had 200 soldiers with him, the best the United States Army could offer. "Hold your fire unless they show clear hostile intent," he ordered. His men were nervous, fingers hovering near triggers. The largest Varan ship opened. A group of aliens walked out in perfect formation. Their leader stepped forward, at least 7 feet tall. He looked at the human soldiers with what seemed like amusement. "Your weapons cannot harm us," the alien said, his voice oddly musical. "Your bullets would be like raindrops against our shields." John stepped forward. "We don't want conflict. We can talk about what you need." The Varan leader made that strange laughing sound again. "There is nothing to discuss. Your planet has resources. We will take them." Without warning, the alien raised a small device. A wave of energy knocked John and his men off their feet. When John regained consciousness hours later, half his men were gone. The aliens had taken them. One of those taken was Dr. Eric Russell, a neurobiologist who had been helping the military understand possible alien biology. He woke up in a sterile white room. His head hurt. A device was attached to his temple. 2 Varans studied him through a clear wall. They spoke to each other in their own language, but somehow Eric could understand them. "Their brains are so inefficient," one said. "So much space wasted on emotions." "An evolutionary weakness," the other agreed. "No wonder they are still planet-bound." Eric realized the device on his head was translating their speech. They didn't know he could understand them. "Their technology is primitive," the first Varan continued. "They still use combustion engines and silicon computers." Supreme Commander Zixtal was right to classify them as a Level 2 civilization, barely out of their Stone Age. The Varan continued to study Eric for days, treating him like an interesting but simple animal. They discussed humans with open mockery, pointing out what they saw as flaws in human design. Meanwhile, around the world, the Varan established bases with total disregard for human settlements. They set up huge mining operations that destroyed entire towns. Their machines extracted metals and minerals with frightening efficiency. When humans tried to fight back, the results were devastating. In Russia, the military launched missiles at a Varan base. The aliens simply redirected the missiles back at Moscow. 50,000 people died. In a worldwide broadcast, Supreme Commander Zixtal addressed humanity again. "Your resistance is not just futile, it is illogical," he said. "You cannot win. Your emotional decisions lead to needless death. Accept your place." At the United Nations, the few remaining world leaders discussed surrender. "We have no choice," said the French president. "They're too powerful." Samantha Carter stood up. "With all due respect, surrender means extinction. The Varan don't want to rule us. They want our planet without us on it." Back in the Varan research vessel, Eric watched and listened carefully. The aliens had a technology far beyond human understanding, but they had one unexpected trait. They followed strict patterns. They did the same things at the same times every day. They never varied their routines. "Interesting," Eric whispered to himself. One night, when the Varan left his room unguarded for exactly 12 minutes, just as they did every night, Eric slipped out. He found a small ship used for traveling between the larger vessels. Having watched the Varan operate it many times, he managed to start it. As he flew toward Earth, alarms blared behind him. But the small ship was fast, and Eric had a head start. He knew something important now. The Varan were powerful but predictable, and predictability could be a weakness. By the time Eric crash-landed in what remained of rural California, the Varan had killed millions of humans. But as he stumbled from the wreckage, he carried with him the first real hope for fighting back. 6 months passed since the Varan first landed. The world was different now. Cities lay in ruins. Billions hid in fear, but not everyone was hiding. Catherine Rodriguez, who everyone called Kate, moved silently through the destroyed streets of San Francisco. Once she had been a Navy SEAL, one of the best. Now she was a resistance leader. Her small team followed close behind her, weapons ready. "Movement ahead," whispered Steve, her scout. "Varan patrol." 3 of them. Kate signaled her team to take cover. They had learned not to fight the Varan head-on. It was suicide. "Wait for them to pass," she said. "Remember the mission." Their mission was simple but dangerous. Find the man who had escaped from a Varan ship. Rumors had spread about him for weeks. He knew things about the aliens, things that might help. After the patrol passed, Kate led her team to an old bunker hidden under what used to be a bank. Inside, a thin man with wild eyes waited for them. "Dr. Eric Russell?" Kate asked. The man nodded. "You're the resistance I've heard about." "What's left of it?" Kate said. "We hear you know something that can help us fight back." Eric looked around nervously. "The Varan aren't invincible. They have a weakness." Just then, the bunker door opened. Everyone raised their weapons. A young man stood there, hands up. "Don't shoot. I followed you because I want to help," he said quickly. Kate's gun didn't waver. "Who are you?" "William Parker." "Will. My family was killed in the first wave. I've been watching you guys for weeks. I'm an engineer. I can build things." Kate wanted to turn him away, but they needed every hand they could get. "You're in, but one wrong move and—" "I understand," Will said. "I just want to fight back." That night, Eric told them everything he had learned while captive. The Varan evolved on a planet with almost no environmental changes. No seasons, no natural disasters. Everything was stable. "So?" asked one of Kate's team members. "So they never needed to adapt," Will said, understanding immediately. "They became experts at one way of doing things, but they can't handle change." Eric nodded. "Exactly. Their technology is amazing, but their thinking is rigid. They follow patterns and protocols exactly the same way every time. That's why they keep their patrol schedules so precise," Kate realized. "It's not just military discipline. They literally can't think any other way." For the next 2 weeks, Kate's team carefully observed Varan patrols and operations. Will proved his worth quickly, figuring out ways to jam their communications temporarily. Eric worked with them, explaining what he knew about Varan biology. "Their nervous systems are different from ours," he explained. "More efficient but less flexible. And they hate our diseases. Even a common cold makes them nervous." This caught the attention of Olivia Grant, a former CDC virologist who had joined the resistance. "Are you saying we might be able to use biological agents against them?" "Not to kill them," Eric clarified, "but maybe to disrupt them. They're terrified of contamination. It's why they wear those suits." The group gained new purpose. They weren't just hiding anymore. They were planning. Kate established contact with other resistance cells across what remained of America. Similar groups were forming in Europe, Asia, and Australia. Slowly, information was being shared. Will spent his days studying a piece of Varan technology they had salvaged from a crashed scout ship. "Their tech is incredible," he told Kate one evening, "but it's designed for their thought patterns, not ours." "Is that good or bad?" she asked. Will smiled for the first time since joining them. "Good, because they'll never expect what I'm thinking of doing with it." Olivia worked with Eric on developing substances that would be harmless to humans, but would trigger the Varan's contamination protocols. "If we can make them think an area is infected, they'll avoid it completely," she explained. 6 months after the invasion, humanity was still outgunned and outnumbered. The Varan controlled most of the planet. But for the first time, there was hope. "They think we're beaten," Kate told her growing team as they prepared for their first real strike against a Varan outpost. "They think we're weak because we're emotional and adaptable. But that's not our weakness." She looked at each face in the room. "That's our strength, and they're about to learn that the hard way." 2 years had passed since the Varan arrived. Earth was a different planet now. Vast areas were mining zones where the aliens extracted metals and minerals. Human cities were either destroyed or controlled by Varan forces, but the resistance grew stronger each day. Kate Rodriguez looked through binoculars at the damaged Varan scout ship that had crashed near the mountains. Her team waited behind rocks, weapons ready. Any movement? Will Parker asked, crouching beside her. 2 guards, Kate whispered. Standard patrol pattern. Steve, her scout, nodded. Just like you said. They always do the same thing at the same time. Kate smiled. That's their weakness. Ready the distraction. On her signal, Olivia released small drones that sprayed her special mixture into the air near the guards. The substance wasn't harmful, but the Varan sensors would detect it as a biological hazard. Within minutes, alarms blared from the guard suits. They're calling for decontamination, Eric said, listening through a device he had modified to track Varan communications. Backup will arrive in exactly 7 minutes. Let's move, Kate ordered. They rushed to the ship. Will went straight to the control panel while Kate and Steve kept watch. Will had spent months studying Varan technology. His hands moved quickly over the alien controls. Can you fly it? Kate asked. Will shook his head. Not yet, but I can download their data. He connected a device he had built to the Varan computer. Information flowed into his storage unit. Every bit of data was valuable. 4 minutes left, Eric warned. We'll finish the download just as Kate spotted the decontamination team approaching. Time to go, she said. They retreated the way they came, disappearing into the hills before the Varan realized what had happened. Back at their hidden base, an old mine shaft reinforced with concrete, Will connected his device to their computers. He had built an entire system from salvaged parts. Look at this, he said as files appeared on the screen. Their entire ship network, navigation data, communication protocols, everything. Daniel Morgan walked over to examine the files. He had joined them 3 months ago after Kate's team rescued him from a Varan work camp. Before the invasion, he had been a car mechanic with an unusual talent for taking things apart and putting them back together. I could use this to build something, Daniel said, his eyes scanning the technical details. Maybe even get that small transport ship we captured working again. Kate looked at the growing team. From just a handful of people hiding in a bunker, they had become a real fighting force with over 100 members. Similar resistance cells existed all over the world, all sharing information through Lisa Bennett's secure network. The Varan still don't understand us, Eric said. Their reports show they're confused about why their predictive models of human behavior keep failing. Olivia laughed. They can't predict what they don't understand. Will pointed to a section of the Varan data. Look at this. Their neural interfaces are designed for their brain patterns. They're structured and linear. Unlike human brains, Eric added, our neural patterns are diverse, creative, adaptive. Daniel's eyes lit up. So if we modified their tech to work with our brain patterns instead, we could control their systems in ways they never imagined. Will finished. For the next month, Will and Daniel worked day and night to create a hybrid system that combined Varan technology with human neural interfaces. Meanwhile, Olivia developed a virus that could disrupt Varan communication networks without harming humans. Kate coordinated with other resistance cells, planning simultaneous strikes using constantly changing tactics. Each time they attacked, they used different methods. Sometimes they struck at night, sometimes during the day. Sometimes they used technology, other times simple traps. The Varan responded with brute force, sending more troops to attack areas where the resistance had been spotted. But by the time they arrived, the humans were already gone, striking somewhere else. They keep trying the same approaches, Kate told her team after a successful raid on a Varan supply depot. More force, more troops, more weapons, but they can't adapt to our changing tactics. Will nodded, looking at the Varan weapons they had captured. And now we're going to use their own technology against them. For the first time, the resistance wasn't just surviving. They were fighting back, and the Varen were beginning to notice. 3 years had passed since the Varen arrived. The face of Earth had changed, but so had humanity. What began as scattered groups hiding from alien patrols had become an organized global resistance. Kate stood in the command center of their new base, a vast network of underground tunnels beneath the Rocky Mountains. Maps and screens covered the walls, showing Varen positions and resistance strongholds around the world. London team just took down another communication tower, Lisa Bennett reported. She had created a secure network that connected resistance cells globally. Her pale face glowed in the light of multiple screens as her fingers danced across keyboards. And Beijing reports successful deployment of the virus in the Eastern Quadrant, she added. Kate nodded. What about the new weapons? Daniel Morgan entered the room, wiping grease from his hands. Just finished the last batch. 20 hybrid rifles ready to go. The weapons Daniel created were unlike anything that existed before the invasion. They combined Varen energy technology with human-designed interfaces. While Varen weapons were calibrated for their unchanging, precise movements, Daniel's hybrid weapons adapted to the user's style, becoming more accurate the longer someone used them. Colonel Miller's team is ready for the Colorado Springs operation, Will Parker said, joining them. In the past 3 years, Will had changed from a frightened young man to a confident leader. A scar ran across his left cheek, a reminder of a close call during a raid 6 months ago. The neural interface is working perfectly, he continued. The Varen still can't figure out how we're bypassing their security systems. Eric Russell laughed. They can't comprehend unpredictability. Their entire civilization is built on patterns and consistency. Kate studied the map. 3 years ago, they thought they had won. They called us primitive and weak. Now they're losing ground every day. On the other side of the base, Olivia Grant supervised the production of her latest creation. What began as simple compounds to trigger Varen contamination protocols had evolved into microscopic nanobots that could disable Varen systems from within. Each batch is programmed to target a different subsystem, she explained to her team. Some disable communications, others affect their sensors or weapons. A resistance fighter looked doubtful, but won't they adapt their defenses? Olivia smiled. That's what the Varen cannot do well. Their systems are designed to be perfect from the start. They struggle to update or change existing structures. By the time they create a defense against one batch, we've already deployed 3 new varieties. Above ground, the war continued. The Varen still controlled much of the planet, but their grip was slipping. In the past 6 months, humans had recaptured 23 outposts and freed thousands from work camps. In his command ship orbiting Earth, Supreme Commander Zixtol reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. The humans continue to defy prediction models, a Varen officer reported. Their attack patterns show no consistent strategy. Impossible, Zixtol responded. Every species follows patterns, increased surveillance, and computational analysis. We have done so 7 times already, the officer replied. Each increase in processing power has failed to produce accurate predictions. Zixtol stared at the holographic display showing lost outposts across the planet. They are using our own technology. How is this possible? Unknown. Their neural patterns are too chaotic for our interfaces to function correctly. For the first time in his long life, Zixtol felt something close to doubt. The invasion of Earth had seemed simple. The humans were technologically inferior by centuries. Victory should have been swift and complete. Instead, they faced growing resistance using weapons and techniques that evolved faster than the Varen could counter. Back in the mountain base, Kate gathered the resistance leaders for their most ambitious plan yet. We've been fighting defensively for 3 years, she told them. Now it's time to take the fight to them. She activated a holographic display showing a massive Varen command center built on the ruins of what was once Washington, D.C. In 2 weeks, we launch a coordinated global counteroffensive, she said. And this will be our primary target. Colonel Miller, now in charge of military operations, nodded grimly. They still outnumber and outgun us. True, Kate replied. But we have something they don't have, and never will. What's that? A new recruit asked. Kate smiled. The ability to be unpredictable, to adapt, to change. And that makes all the difference. 4 years after the invasion, the day of the global counteroffensive arrived. Kate stood before 500 fighters in the main cavern of the mountain base. Their faces showed determination and hope. Today, we take back our planet, she said simply. Every resistance cell around the world is moving at the same time. The Varen won't be able to focus their forces in one place. Colonel Miller stepped forward. Alpha Team will attack their command center in DC. Beta Team will target their communication hub. Gamma Team will provide distraction. The fighters moved to their transport vehicles, a mix of rebuilt human machines, and captured Varen craft that Daniel and Will had modified. Kate checked her hybrid rifle one last time. The weapon felt warm in her hands, almost alive. Daniel had explained that it learned from her movements, becoming more accurate with each use. Will nodded. The Varen think in straight lines. If we hit them from multiple directions at once, their decision-making process will slow down. As dawn broke, the attack began. Around the world, resistance fighters launched coordinated strikes against Varen strongholds. In Africa, they targeted mining operations. In Europe, they hit processing centers. In Asia, they attacked transport hubs. Kate led Alpha Team toward Washington, D.C., or what remained of it. The once proud capital was now dominated by a massive Varen structure that rose like a dark tower above the ruins. Approaching drop point, their pilot announced. Varen air defenses are distracted by Gamma Team's decoys. Kate and her 50 fighters parachuted from their transport, landing in what used to be the National Mall. The Varen tower loomed above them, its black surface reflecting the morning sun. Defensive positions as expected, Steve reported after scouting ahead. Guards are following standard patterns. Olivia handed out small containers to each fighter. Release these near their sensor arrays. The nanobots will disrupt their internal communications. The team split into smaller groups, approaching the tower from different directions. Kate, Will, and 5 others took the most dangerous route, straight through the front entrance. Ready with the neural override? Kate asked. Will nodded, holding up a device he and Daniel had created. This will make their security systems see us as Varen. It worked. The massive doors opened as they approached. Inside, Varen soldiers moved with mechanical precision, unaware of the human infiltration. Will connected his device to a control panel. I'm in their network, he whispered, sending the location to Lisa. Across the ocean, in a hidden base beneath London, Lisa Bennett received Will's signal. She activated a program that connected to every resistance cell worldwide. Commencing global system hack, she announced to her team. Releasing the virus now. Back in Washington, Kate's team reached the central command room. Dozens of Varen officers worked at control stations, monitoring the worldwide attacks with growing confusion. Their response time is slowing, Will whispered. They can't process so many unexpected events at once. Just then, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Varen soldiers reached for their weapons, but many of their systems flickered and failed as Lisa's virus spread through their network, and Olivia's nanobots disrupted their equipment. Now, Kate shouted. Her team opened fire with their hybrid weapons. Unlike normal guns that the Varen could track and counter, these weapons adapted their energy signatures constantly. Varen shields designed to block specific energy patterns couldn't stop them. In orbit, Supreme Commander Zixtal received urgent reports from every continent. Simultaneous attacks at all major facilities, a communications officer reported. Our forces cannot coordinate responses. Impossible, Zixtal said. No species can organize on such a scale without a central command structure that we would detect. The humans appear to be using our own communication network against us, another officer reported. Unknown virus spreading through all systems. For the first time, Zixtal felt something new. fear. In the command center, Kate's team secured the main control room. Will worked quickly at the Varen computers. "I'm shutting down their defense grid," he said, "and sending their ship locations to all resistance cells." Kate looked at the monitors showing battles around the world. Humans were taking back their planet, one city at a time. The Varen, for all their advanced technology, couldn't adapt fast enough to the rapidly changing situation. "They never understood us," Kate said quietly. "They thought emotions made us weak. But our emotions, our anger, our hope, our love for our world, that's what made us fight. That's what made us adapt." Will nodded as he finished his work. "And that's why we're going to win." 5 years after the Varen first arrived on Earth, the final battle began. Humans had reclaimed most of their planet's surface. Now they looked to the skies. Kate stood on the Bridge of the Freedom, a massive ship built from captured Varen technology. Once she had been just a soldier hiding in ruins. Now she commanded Earth's first space fleet. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Steve said, using her new title. Kate nodded. Around the Freedom, 20 smaller vessels moved into formation. Each was piloted by humans wearing neural interfaces that Will and Daniel had perfected. These interfaces allowed human minds to connect directly with Varen technology, using human creativity to control alien machines. "The mothership is holding position above the North Atlantic," Lisa reported from her station. She had grown from a quiet programmer into the Resistance's intelligence chief. "Their smaller vessels are forming a defensive screen. They're following standard orbital defense pattern," Will noted. He stood beside Kate, his scar now joined by streaks of gray in his hair. "Just as we expected." Kate took a deep breath. "Begin the approach. Tell all ships to follow the random path protocols." "Their vessels move without pattern," a Varen officer reported. "Targeting systems cannot establish firing solutions." "Impossible," Zixtel said, but with less conviction than before. After 5 years of fighting the humans, the word impossible had lost its meaning. The human fleet closed in. The Varen ships fired energy weapons, but most missed their erratic targets. The few hits were absorbed by shields that Daniel had designed specifically to adapt to Varen weapons. "Prepare the virus delivery system," Kate ordered. Olivia, now in charge of biological countermeasures, activated a special system. The latest version of her nanobots sprayed into space around the Varen ships. Too small to be seen or stopped by shields, they attached to the hulls and began disrupting systems from the outside in. "Their shields are fluctuating," Lisa reported. "Communication between their ships is breaking down." The human fleet pressed their advantage. Kate led the Freedom directly toward the mothership while the smaller vessels engaged the Varen defense screen. "Prepare boarding teams," Kate ordered. "We're going for the command center." Transport ships launched from the Freedom, carrying Kate, Will, Daniel, and a team of fighters. Using the confusion created by Olivia's nanobots, they docked with the mothership. "Remember, we need Zixtal alive," Kate reminded them as they moved through the alien corridors. The team fought their way to the command center. The Varen soldiers, cut off from central coordination, fell into rigid, predictable patterns that the humans easily countered. In the command center, Zixtal stood alone as the humans burst through the doors. "You cannot win," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Kate stepped forward. "We already have. But we're not here to destroy you." Will connected a special neural interface to the Varen communication system. Lisa had designed it to allow direct mind-to-mind contact between species. "We want you to understand us," he said. Before Zixtal could protest, the connection activated. For the first time, human thoughts, with all their complexity, emotion, and adaptability, flowed directly into a Varen mind. Zixtal staggered. So much chaos, so much possibility. Through the connection, he experienced human creativity, human emotion, human adaptability. He saw how humans changed and grew stronger through challenges, while his people had stagnated in their perfect, unchanging world. "You are not what we thought," Zixtal said finally. Kate nodded. And now you understand why we fought so hard. In the days that followed, a peace treaty was signed. The remaining Varen agreed to leave Earth and never return. But they also agreed to share knowledge and technology that would help rebuild what had been destroyed. As the last Varen ships prepared to depart Earth orbit, Kate and her team watched from the Freedom's observation deck. "Do you think they learned anything from all this?" Daniel asked. Kate nodded. "I think they learned what we've always known. Life isn't about being perfect. It's about adapting to change." Lisa's console beeped. "Incoming message from Sixtel's ship," she reported. The message was simple. "We underestimated what it means to be human. We will not make this mistake again." Will smiled. "I guess they finally get it." Kate looked out at the stars. "They thought our emotions and adaptability were weaknesses. Now they know better." She turned to her friends, the people who had fought alongside her for 5 long years. "Being human isn't a disadvantage. It's our greatest strength." The last Varen ship disappeared into the distance, leaving humanity to rebuild their world, stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before.